Well, welcome back to class. This is Applied Anatomy and Physiology, AAP 301 for the College of Natural Health Sciences, Bermuda. I will be your professor today, Dr. Delcina Bean Burrows, and this is lecture number 3. And today we are looking at chapter 3, where we will discuss chemistry, cells, and tissues. In terms of our learning objectives, upon completion of this chapter, the student will be able to discuss the importance of understanding basic chemistry, structures, and functions of cells and tissues as they relate to the practice of manual therapy, name the 3 structural components common to all cells and describe the general function of each, list the 4 categories of tissues found in the body, and describe their distinguishing characteristics, and explain the general function and location of each. So each cell of the body is a functional unit, but also a member of the complex human organism. Cells influence organisms by communicating, cooperating, defending, hurting, and destroying one another. To survive, cells must respond and adapt constantly to changing environments. Let's look at the chemical components of cells. Most physiological processes involve chemical reactions in and around cells. Atoms refer to the small units of energy, which are the basic building blocks of all matter. Atoms combine to form molecules. Elements contain molecules of like atoms. Compounds contain molecules formed by different types of atoms. Elements are represented by chemical symbols composed of letters. Composition of elements and compounds are represented by chemical formula. Chemical compounds in the body are classified as inorganic or organic. Figure 3.1 illustrates how atoms combine to form a water molecule. Every molecule of water, H2O, is made up of 1 atom of oxygen and 2 atoms of hydrogen. Let's now discuss inorganic compounds. Inorganic compounds are made of molecules that do not contain carbon. Most of the common important inorganic compounds that are found in the body's cells and tissues are water, salts such as sodium, calcium, and potassium, acids and bases, such as the ratio of an acid to base of compounds, which is measured by the pH. Organic compounds, on the other hand, do contain carbon molecules. They are the true structural building blocks of cells. Cells and tissues composed of organic substances are carbohydrates, such as glucose, lipids, such as fat deposits, proteins, which are composed of amino acids, and nucleic acids, such as DNA and RNA. Now let's talk about the structure of cells. Cytology is the study of cells. Cells have many different sizes, shapes, and functions. All cells share common components: the plasma membrane, cytoplasm, and the nucleus. And here we have the key structures of the cell. Beginning from the superior left, we have the ribosome, the rough endoplasmic reticulum, the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, the cytoskeleton, the centrosome, of which they are featuring 2 centrioles. We have protein, and then over to the superior right, we see the nucleolus, we see the nucleus as a whole, the nuclear envelope, the Golgi apparatus, the cytosol, the cell membrane, and the mitochondrion, followed by the lysosome. The plasma membrane is a selectively permeable outer membrane of the cell, and it is also referred to as the cell membrane. It is composed primarily of lipids. It may have extensions such as microvilli or cilia. It regulates substances entering and leaving the cell, and it monitors the internal and external environmental changes. Figure 3.3 illustrates how the plasma membrane is a thin, semi-permeable membrane that is made up of proteins and lipids that encloses the cytoplasm of the cell. It contains a double layer of lipids and several types of proteins. Cytoplasm is the cellular contents between plasma membrane and the nucleus. It has two primary components: cytosol, which is a gel-like medium about 75% to 90% water, and a variety of small structures called organelles. So what are the organelles? Well, we have the mitochondria, which is referred to the powerhouse of the cell, and it produces the most ATP. We have the endoplasmic reticulum, which is the transportation system for substances to move throughout the cell. We have the Golgi apparatus, which modifies and packages proteins for the export out of the cell. And we have lysosomes. This is a digestive enzyme that destroys foreign substances and digests worn-out cell structures. Cytoskeleton is the filaments and tubules that provide shape, strength, and mobility to cells. The centrosome is made up of two bundles of centrioles. Its important roles are cell division and the production and organizing of the cytoskeleton. The nucleus is present in most cells. It contains DNA, which stores the genetic code for each cell and for the whole body. DNA contains genes, which determine traits and carry instructions for protein production. The nucleolus is inside the nucleus and is formed of DNA and RNA. The nucleus is a key structure of the cell in that it contains the most important information regarding the cell's survival. Now let's consider the cellular processes, beginning with passive transport. Passive and active transport is the mechanisms for moving substances in and out of the cells. In passive transport, no energy is expended. Substances move according to concentration or pressure gradients. Passive transport mechanisms include diffusion, facilitated diffusion, and filtration. Figure 3.5 illustrates diffusion. It is a passive transport mechanism in which atoms or molecules move across the plasma membrane from an area of high concentration to an area of lower concentration. This is shown in the diffusion of oxygen into the cell and carbon dioxide out of the cell along their concentration gradients. Our diagram here illustrates osmosis before it occurs. Before osmosis, the volume of water in each compartment is the same, while the concentration of solutes is higher in the right compartment. Figure 3.6 illustrates what occurs after osmosis. Through osmosis, water has moved across the membrane from the left to the right compartment to balance the concentration of fluids. While the solute concentration is now balanced, the fluid volume of the right compartment has increased. Now let's take a look at what happens during active transport. Active transport is needed to move molecules against the concentration or pressure gradient. Active transport mechanisms require energy, breaking down ATP. Common active transport mechanisms are ion pumps, phagocytosis, and exocytosis. Figure 3.7a illustrates phagocytosis. In this active transport mechanism, particles are engulfed and brought into the cell, forming a vesicle. A lysosome attaches to the vesicle and releases digestive enzymes to dissolve the particles within the vesicle. And here we have in figure 3.7b, white blood cells engulf a parasite. Now let's talk about cellular metabolism. Metabolism is all chemical processes that happen in cells to sustain life. There are two categories: anabolism, which is the building up process used to replace, repair, or store cells and tissues, and catabolism, which is the breaking down process that provides more usable forms of nutrients and creates or releases energy. Now let's consider cell division and differentiation. The process of cell division takes place either by way of mitosis or meiosis. Cell differentiation occurs from stem cells, and there are three types: totipotent stem cells, pluripotent stem cells, and multipotent stem cells. Figure 3.9 here illustrates cell division. When a cell divides to create two daughter cells, it copies and separates its genetic material through mitosis and divides its cytoplasm through cytokinesis. Figure 3.10 illustrates cell differentiation. The entire human organism develops from a single fertilized egg. As this initial cell divides, it produces stem cells which further divide and differentiate to produce all the specialized cells of the body. Figure 3.11 illustrates the embryonic layers. Stem cells of the developing embryo organize into three distinct layers: the ectoderm, which will later become the nerve tissue and integumentary tissue; the mesoderm, which will later become the bone tissue, blood, muscle tissue, epithelial tissue of the urinary and endocrine organs; and the endoderm, which will later become the epithelial linings of many organs and glands, particularly of the digestive system. Each embryonic layer differentiates into a specific set of cells and tissues. Now let's look at the various types of tissue. Histology is the study of tissues. Manual therapy techniques directly address characteristics of specific tissue types. There are 4 types of tissues in the body: epithelial, muscle, nervous, and connective. Table 3.2 in your textbook illustrates the characteristics and functions of tissues. Epithelial tissue is characterized by its avascular nature, which means that it is without a blood supply. It is described by shape and arrangement of cells, such as flat, which is squamous, square, which is cuboidal, and columnar, single layer, which is simple, or multi-layered, which means stratified. Its general function is to line, cover, protect, and secrete, and it is located in the skin, the lining of the body cavities, and the covering of organs. Muscle tissue is characterized or described by its appearance and nervous system control. Striped or striated or smooth, which is non-striated, and its voluntary or involuntary control. Its general function is to contract to create posture, movement of body parts, movement of fluid and substances throughout the body, and it is located in skeletal muscle, the heart, and the walls of internal organs and vessels. Nervous tissue is characterized by two types of cells, non-conductile, which is the glial cells, and conductile, which is the neurons. Its general functions is to support, protect, and insulate, which is the glial, and conduct electrical impulses, which is the neurons. It is located in the brain, the spinal cord, and the nerves. Connective tissue is characterized by three common structural elements: cells, fibers, and ground substance. Its general function is to support and provide structure, connect, protect, and transport, and it is located in the bone and cartilage, tendons and ligaments, blood and lymph, and in body fat. Let's look at epithelial tissue. Epithelium is the internal lining and external covering for the body. Epithelial tissue is classified according to shape of the cells and the number of layers. The shapes include squamous, cuboidal, columnar, transitional. The layers include simple or stratified. Figure 3.12 illustrates epithelial cells and tissue. Epithelial tissues are named according to the shape of cells and their arrangement. Cell shapes can be squamous, which is flat, cuboidal, or columnar. Cells can be organized in simple, pseudo-stratified, or stratified layers. Now let's discuss muscle tissue. A unique quality of all muscle tissue is that they have the ability to contract to generate force. There are three types of muscle tissue: skeletal muscle, which is striated and voluntary; cardiac muscle, which is also striated and involuntary; and visceral or smooth muscle, which is non-striated and is also involuntary. Figure 3.13 in your textbook illustrates the three types of muscle tissue: cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, and skeletal muscle. Let's now discuss nervous tissue. Nervous tissue is found in the brain, the spinal cord, and the nerves. They are classified as either conductile or non-conductile, in that neurons that conduct impulses are conductile. And then we have the neuroglia, which are the glial cells that support and protect the neurons. Figure 3.14 in your textbook illustrates nervous tissue. A single neuron with one type of glial cell that creates a fatty sheath to protect and insulate the nerve cell is illustrated here. Now let's take a look at connective tissue. Connective tissue is the most abundant tissue in the body. It includes a variety of tissues such as bone, cartilage, fat, and blood. There are 5 basic types: liquid, loose, fibrous, cartilage, and bone. Connective tissues have 3 structural features: cells, fibers, and ground substance. Manual therapists refer to fibers and ground substance together as the connective tissue matrix. Figure 3.15 in your textbook illustrates the 5 different types of connective tissue: bone, cartilage, liquid, loose, and fibrous. Now let's look at the connective tissue cells. Fibroblasts are the most numerous and commonly occurring connective tissue cells. Mast cells secrete 2 important substances that affect blood and blood vessels. These are heparin and histamine. Macrophages are highly active phagocytes. Collagen fibers are the thickest, strongest, and most abundant fiber found in the human body. Reticular fibers are made from thinner and more delicate types of collagen. Elastic fibers are made up of protein elastin, and they are much smaller and more flexible. Ground substance is the intercellular fluid component of all connective tissues. In dehydration, fluid capacity of ground substance is diminished and adhesions may form. Thesotropy refers to the characteristic of ground substance to change between gel and sol states. Manual therapy can stir ground substances and loosen tissue. Now, in terms of tissue repair and regeneration, the body tissues differ in their ability to repair and regenerate after damage. Tissues capable of regeneration include epithelial tissue, smooth muscle, and bone. Scar tissue from muscle repair often interferes with normal function. Okay, so for assignment number 3, you're going to list the 4 categories of tissues found in the body. You're going to describe their distinguishing characteristics and explain the general function and location of each. Explain the different classifications of epithelial cells and tissues. Name 3 types of muscle tissue and explain the distinguishing characteristics of each. You're also going to name the 2 types of nervous tissue and explain the function of each. You're also going to name the common components of all types of connective tissue, and you're going to list the different types of connective tissue and describe where they are located. And as always, if you have any difficulty whatsoever with this assignment, please shoot me an email. My office hours are from 4 to 6 on Thursdays. And with that, do have a great week.